a tutorial video to show you how to upload podcast to Anchor. And as you can see, we are signed in to our account. And at any time, we can always go and look at our settings for our podcast, community chats. You can update the settings. There's a little help bar where you can sign out. And just to kind of give you an overview of the interface of Anchor, this right here will take you back home. So if you ever click this Anchor logo, it'll kind of take you to the main page of your podcast where it'll give you your album art, your title, your description. You have the ability to post either the individual URL for an episode or just the entire podcast to the Facebook page or to a Twitter account. You can also copy the URL. And again, once you have episodes uploaded to your Anchor account, this will be a little bit more filled out since you'll have episodes in your back catalog. So to look a little bit different, we're going to go ahead and upload an episode today to kind of show you how it works. And so hopefully that'll be a pretty easy template to follow going forward. So this is your dashboard, and there's three really main tabs to Anchor. There's the dashboard, the episodes tab, and then the money tab if you want to monetize your podcast. But we're just going to worry about the dashboard tab and the episode tab today. You can also click new episode over here. Either or works. Episodes just allows you to see all of your episodes, in a cataloged list. But obviously, since we don't have any episodes, we're going to need to either make an episode or click new episode. So let's go ahead and click new episode. All right, so when you get to this page, this is where all of your tools for creating an episode live. So you can record audio right in your browser. You can add listener voice messages. And if you're not familiar with what voice messages are, essentially what you can do is you can send a text message to an individual, and they can it'll open up in a web browser, and they're able to record a 1-minute voice memo that is then sent to your Anchor account, and you can add that message to your podcast. And then you can obviously access your folder library, and then there's a few free royalty-free transitions like free music and sound effects that you can play around with. But today we're just going to upload some files that we have already exported. So we're going to go to the Box folder, find our community chats on Box, expand this a little bit so we can see it. So there's our podcast files folder, and we have done it by date. So this is our first podcast file, the Introducing Community Chats podcast from April 20th. So we're going to open that file. And when we do that, it's going to automatically start uploading the file into, I guess, the episode builder is what we'll call this window. And at any time, you can always preview your episode. It'll give you a total length. So right now we're at 17 minutes and 3 seconds. And then we have this window that pops up asking if we want to get paid when people hear. We can activate sponsorships, but for right now, we're not going to do that. And it'll take a few minutes for this file to process. Obviously, the longer the file, the longer it will take to process. And your internet connection does have something to do with how long it will take that audio file to process. While we're waiting on that to process, though, you can kind of see, okay, it's finished, so it didn't take too long. You can see over here this little bar, where the mouse looks like you can grab it. You actually can reorganize your audio file. So just for the sake of example, we'll just go ahead and upload another audio file. Like, okay, here we go. A good example would be, let's go back to our Box folder. And let's go to the voiceovers folder where we recorded our intro and our outro. So we click, let's say, the intro, because we want to have that play before the actual podcast file. And you'd click open. And it's going to upload it and process it. And while it's processing, you can sit here and play around with what order you want the audio files to play in. So let's say that this is actually your outro file. Well, you want that to play at the end of the podcast. So you would drag it below the actual podcast file. We've already incorporated the intro and the outro into this podcast file. So we don't need this intro because it would be redundant. And if you do ever accidentally add an audio file, you can click these three little dots over here, split it into multiple segments, which opens up a pretty rudimentary audio editor. You can download it or remove it from the episode, which is what we want to do. So we have uploaded our podcast file. It has finished processing. And at this point, we're pretty much ready to go. So we can click Save Episode, and it brings up this episode options page where we can give it a title. So we want the title of this episode to be, let's see, I believe it was April 20th. So introducing community chats, and then 4/20. I will double check the date on that, even though I believe it is correct. And let's see if I can pull this up. I think that is the correct date. Let me just pull up Box on my laptop just to confirm. All right, community chats folder and podcast files. Yes, okay, that is the correct date. And then we have an episode description where we can type a customized description that goes a little bit more in depth than the actual podcast description. So our description for this could be our first episode, introducing community chats, a series. Let's go back to the email that had the script in it. Okay, an interview series elevating the voices of community leaders in the Lafayette Oxford University community. And below this episode description box, you actually can see a publish date. Now, this is really, really useful because if you record the episode and it takes, a few days or a week or so to edit it, you can backdate it. So we have the option to publish the episode now, or we can actually scroll back in time, find April 20th, and publish it there. And the podcast probably was recorded around noon, so we can actually set this to be 12 p.m. And this is our first season and our first episode. This is a full episode, it's not a trailer. And we have clean content. And again, this will be the album art for this episode. We can upload new episode art. So if you wanted to change your episode art per episode, or excuse me, change your album art per episode, you could do that. But for all our intents and purposes, this will suffice. So again, major things to go over episode options. You want to give it a title. I would recommend dating it. Probably a short 1 to 2 sentence description, publish date, put in the episode and season number. Now this you may think is not important. It depends on the platform that the listener is using. So if you're on Spotify, it's, as far as I know, they will not see which episode number or season number it is unless you were to put it in the title. So if you were to say, community, if you were to say like episode 1, and then people on Spotify would know this is the first episode of the series. Now on iTunes, it does it automatically. So Apple actually takes this information and will organize your podcast for you so you don't have to reorder it on iTunes. So this is actually a pretty handy feature. I would encourage keeping up with this because it will just make everything a little bit easier for the listeners. Once you're done with this, all you have to do is click schedule episode, and we're not going to do that right now, but your episode is live. So this episode, introducing community chats, April 20th of 2020, this is when it was published on right here. Here's the description that we typed in. You can send this to your Facebook page, your Twitter account. You can copy the link directly. And this will, again, when you copy this link, it will copy the link to the Anchor version of the podcast. If you want to see where your podcast is being distributed, that should be under, let's check dashboard. Here we go. So if you go to dashboard, you'll see where your podcast is available. So it says available on 2 platforms. You can check. Here's your RSS feed if you ever need to copy your RSS feed and you want to manually distribute your podcast to another service, say Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, all these other services. You can take your RSS feed and manually distribute it. Now, I will say that it takes about a week or two for Apple Podcasts to automatically pick up your podcast on Anchor. So you don't really have to manually distribute it to Apple. It just takes a little bit longer for them to review your podcast and approve it. Spotify is usually instantaneous. So you can see right now we're available on multiple listening platforms. Anchor, which is our default, where we're, kind of our home base, and then Spotify. So if we wanted to listen to the show on Spotify, all we'd have to do is open Spotify, go to the podcast section of the application, search for community chats, and we should be able to find our show. And once again, once we have uploaded an episode, you can always go to your episodes tab to see the episode catalog, and it will tell you right here the number of times that people have listened to your podcast. And, just some more details here. You can always delete an episode, download an episode if you ever lose the original file. You can view details, which give you some analytics and some listening data, and then you can copy a public link to the episode. So if you wanted to promote one particular episode instead of just the podcast in general, this is what you would need to do, and you would just take that and post it to your Facebook page, your Twitter account, or wherever else you wanted to promote that. So yeah, basically that is everything in Anchor. It's super simple, super easy to set up. Just remember, every single time when you log in, you should be at the dashboard page. You're going to click new episode. Once you click new episode, if you've already exported out your audio file, you're just going to upload it from your computer, type in a few details. That should be really it. You're hitting the ground running, and it's easy as that.